My first day on the job at Sara Lee was in a tiny little data center. It more resembled a closet that was about 60 degrees because we were in there with the servers. Like, we had no office. We sat in there with the servers. And I could not stay awake. I mean, I did stay awake, but it was just really hard to do. But right outside my office was the accounting department. And there was this girl that just kept coming in and out of the office there to see her mom. She worked there as well. But long story short, that's my wife now. So I met her. I had every intention of going back to UT. And I met her. And of course, that changed everything.
That was the voice of Chris Donaldson, entrepreneur and leader in the Dyersburg, Tennessee community. Chris took an interesting path to his IT career, but it was that path that led him not only to his wife, but to the world of business and later to the world of co-working with his founding of The Mill. Welcome to 40 by 45, the West Tennessee Business Podcast, sponsored by Tennessee Industrial Printing. Chris, welcome to the 40 by 45 podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Chris, you've had success with the Mill and with Tencom, and we'll get to those, but you weren't always in IT.
No, I actually came to IT pretty late in life, career-wise.
Yeah. What were you doing before?
So I was actually a carpenter and a cabinet maker. Most recently, before IT, a cabinet maker. And you want me to tell the whole progression of how I got there?
Yeah.
But so when I grew up on a farm, and in farming, you end up having obtaining all these other skills. So I became a carpenter at 13, first job ripping roofs off of a building. And so just through high school and college, I'd come home, work on the farm or go do carpentry work. Well, I didn't finish college in 4 years, and I just went back to, I was already a skilled carpenter, and I moved to Florida and got a job as a cabinet maker or a furniture builder. And that was kind of my, that's what I did for years and years. And so I decided I wanted to go back to school, and I moved to Knoxville and got a full-time job as a cabinet maker there after spending several years doing this. And so, and then I made the leap to IT, but I was a carpenter and cabinet maker till about 27.
Then how did you make that transition into IT?
Yeah, so my sister was working in IT, and I'll say, I had spent a year in architecture and design school at UT while working full-time as a cabinet maker. And I look around the cabinet shop, and people who are now younger than I am now look like they were 70 or 80 years old, because nobody cared about OSHA or health and safety. So people are walking around slumped over because their backs are broken. They're coughing because their lungs are torn up from all the dust. And, I was just having a moment like, is this going to be me in 20 years? And I was already having back problems and breathing problems. And so my sister calls and says, hey, I need to take a leave of absence. And I know you like computers, and I can trust you. And can I train you up to do the basics of my job while I take this leave of absence? So that was, I made this, and it was right at the end of the semester. I took a leave of absence from my job and came down to help her out. And then, of course, other things happened to steer the rest of the course.
Yeah.
But
so that was, if I remember, Sara Lee Company.
Yeah, Sara Lee Corporation in New Bern.
So how did Sara Lee change your life?
Yeah, so Sara Lee, first off, I hated it because I go from being on my feet all the time, working in the elements, because in a cabinet shop, it's not like an air-conditioned, heated environment. It's kind of, so if it's cold outside, it's cold in there. And but my first day on the job at Sara Lee was in a tiny little data center. It more resembled a closet that was about 60 degrees because we were in there with the servers. Like, we had no office. We sat in there with the servers. And I could not stay awake. I mean, I did stay awake, but it was just really hard to do. But right outside my office was the accounting department. And there was this girl that just kept coming in and out of the office there to see her mom. She worked there as well. But long story short, that's my wife now. So I met her. I had every intention of going back to UT. And I met her. And of course, that changed everything. And so I ended up transferring to UT Martin to finish up. I did a different degree program, and so yeah, that was the big switch. And I learned to like IT, so that I didn't have to have a broken back and blown out lungs.
Necessarily not only gave you a new career direction, but also gave you a family.
That's right. Yeah, it was. It just changed everything. So, and I'll tell you, one thing that's interesting is my dream was to become an architect, and this is a late in life that I got into the program, and I had applied for an internship at the Nashville. It was going to be called something like the Nashville Design Center, and in 2001, downtown Nashville was not anything like it is now. And there was this whole push on how are we going to make Nashville better? It's unbelievable to even think of. Mm-hmm. But so they created this new urbanism design center there, and one of my professors was going to lead it up. And I was like, man, I got this. Yeah. This is my thing, my passion. And I applied for that and got turned down for it, and got passed over for, I felt like, just not the right people. I felt I was totally qualified for it. But had I gotten that internship, the thing that I really wanted and was super passionate about, I never would have taken this opportunity, and we wouldn't be sitting here talking today. I wouldn't have met my wife, wouldn't have had my kids. So,
I saw someone that said something along the lines of, life is a mystery that you can only look at backwards.
Yeah.
And so things make sense sometimes after the fact.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty neat way for such a significant life change, because that led into Tencom, but it didn't directly get to Tencom. So how did you get to Tencom then?
Yes, so Tencom, how we got there is soon, and I always had this bug I wanted to be a business owner. So ever since I was a kid, I even did little things when I was a kid. But I always wanted to be my own boss. And I was constantly thinking of ideas, dreaming them up, writing things down, just really, I'm a dreamer anyway. So I was just constantly for years dreaming about starting a business. Well, my dad had retired, so I was working at Sara Lee, had a good job. My dad had retired, and he became a day trader. So he was a really, really smart guy. I mean, I would say genius level guy. And he worked for this corporation. He's a computer programmer. Well, he retired from that and then decided to start day trading. And he was doing really well at it until the big .com bust, which wiped out everybody that was a day trader. It was a terrible, terrible time for all these people that were day trading. But technology had made it easy for people to sit at home and real-time trade, without having to call a broker or anything like that. So he lost everything. I mean, literally lost everything. And I was early in my career. I mean, very early. And I didn't have the money to start a business or to pay his bills or anything. And so, we were just talking, and he said, well, I can program, I can build websites. And this was really early in website development. And so long story short, I said, well, we decided we'd start a business, but he didn't want to be a partner. He just wanted to work for me. So nights and weekends, I would hustle for business. We started Tencom as around 2001. I would hustle. I would organize, get clients. I would do a lot of the front end stuff. And then he was the typical programmer in the dark, like you've seen my office, in the dark with the shades pulled and everybody leave him alone. And so we did that for several years, but it finally got to the point that I had to make a decision. I was working till midnight every night. My wife was like, what's going on? You're just working all the time. And so I got to a point where, I had to make a decision on what am I going to do. But it all started with my dad. But the funny thing is, it all started kind of for him, but I was passionate about wanting to be a business owner. But then it turned into this whole thing for me and my whole family. So it was really interesting how we made the switch.
Haven Insurance Partners is a locally owned independent insurance agency. Haven takes your risks, whether personal, commercial, health, or life, and approaches many different insurance companies on your behalf. This allows them to find different coverages and price points for you. At Haven, they believe you deserve options, and they want to help you explore those. Visit haveninsurance.com to find better coverage today. You might not know that I started my educational journey at a community college after high school, which allowed me to have some time to make decisions for my future and save money on gen ed classes. Jackson State Community College provides that opportunity and many others for students in West Tennessee. Visit jscc.edu to see all of their educational and career building opportunities.
Special thanks to our season sponsor, Tennessee Industrial Printing.
So, you're getting started with Tencom, your dad's working with you, you're thinking about leaving Sara Lee, you've gotten married, you start getting an office.
Yeah, so it just had become too much. We were doing websites and work like that, but then I was picking up work doing networking, which is what I did at, my day job. And it had just gotten too much for the home office. And so we decided, hey, let's make the leap and get an office. And I was thinking, now's the time I'm going to make the leap and go full time into work. This was around 2005. And we go, and back then there was no co-working spaces. There's nothing like we have today. But, you had to sign a 3-year lease. You had to sign a 3-year contract on internet, telephone. You had to get any business machines, copiers you needed. You had to buy all the stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we did that. We went and did all that. And my wife, Joanna, was actually going to work in the office until I could fully leave Sara Lee. And she started doing that. And then we found out she was pregnant. And, of course, we needed health insurance.
Yeah. And
so we had to delay that dream of me leaving the company and because we needed health insurance. But the problem, and this is the problem for small business people, is that we had all those contracts. And if I thought, well, my dream's not killed. I think it's just delayed. Mm-hmm. And if I go and break all these contracts, if I break this lease, it's a small town, I'm going to ruin my credit. I'm not going to be able to get started again. Mm-hmm. So we just bit the bullet and paid out and just paid that year for all that stuff. And then in 2006, we finally, had a small child and finally cashed out the tiny 401k I had. And finally made the leap into full-time business ownership.
Going all in on that, cashing the 401k.
All the way.
You're doing that. 2008 comes.
Yeah. So 2006, and at the time, and I think this is the case for a lot of small businesses, you tend to, when you don't have enough business in one area, you tend to diversify. Yeah. And just because you got to hustle and feed your family. And so we were doing wholesale. We did a lot of refurbishing of factory closeouts, so like computers that would come from factories that were closing. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know it at the time. The blessing that we were getting with all these factories closing was a precursor to what was to come in 2008. Mm-hmm. The economy was going down, and we didn't realize it because we were getting all this business. And so we were doing wholesale, refurbishing, and we had actually started a computer store in Dyersburg because in little old Hornbeak, where we had the refurbishing place, people found out we were there, and we started doing a lot of computer repair, and people wanted to buy these computers retail. We were just refurbishing and selling them wholesale, in bulk. And so we thought, man, Hornbeak has been a blessing. We weren't even planning on this, and so we decided to open a store in Dyersburg. Well, this is 06, 07, somewhere around in there. Well, we get going, and we are blowing and going. We're selling.
And your sister's a partner in this, right?
My sister, yes. So I didn't say this before, but she decided to come in with me on the company, mm-hmm. and she was still working at Sara Lee as well, but she actually left a year early, or she left before I did, mm-hmm. and but anyway, so we decided to open the store in Dyersburg and selling used computers, doing very well at it. And then like a light switch, when the recession hit and the credit crunch happened, nobody was buying computers anymore. And we just about lost it all. It wasn't much at that time, but, we just about went out of business.
Yeah. I want to play a clip. So I interviewed your sister, Amy, before this interview.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I want to play a clip from her about that experience.
Okay.
Well, I think that's where he really excels. He was like, okay, this is not working. I have to provide a living for my family. What can I do to grow this business in this hard economic time? And that's when he realized, monthly maintenance with large customers, amazing job. I mean, the odds are that company should have been shut down during the recession, and he was able to keep it going and grow it during that difficult time. And I think that's a real testament to his drive.
2008 was a challenge. So
Yeah.
your sister talked about you guys could have been dead to rights right there.
Yeah. Should have been.
Should have been. What pivot did you make to pull out of that?
Yeah, I think it's there's probably a little bit of crazy in all of it. In entrepreneurship, you have this dream and you don't want to give up on it. But we were really broke. I mean, just at one point, I think we were so broke that my neighbor was mowing my yard because I didn't have money to put gas in the lawnmower. I mean, that's how bad it had gotten. And but my sister, it's funny. She works for FedEx and has this great job, and she's been there for, 15 or more years now. And she was recruiting me hard she's like, gosh, just give up on this thing. You need to shut this down and come to work. And I would have been. It took me 10 years to dig out of that hole, and I would have been so much further along had I done that. So I'm just now reaping the benefits of that sacrifice. But I just saw at the time, we were in a commodity business. Walmart, we were selling used computers for more than new computers were at Walmart. So we had this kind of inversion where, they were cheaper with us. They're used, but they're corporate computers. And then Walmart just, they put so many businesses out. That inversion happened, and the recession and everything. And so we knew that people needed help with service, and we just really went all in on service. And I found out about this concept of managed services where you charge basically a flat rate and provide all these back-end services. And you don't go after, which is such a win-win thing, you're not going after revenue on somebody's misery. So where, break fix hourly work is where somebody has to break for you to make money. And so, we just went all in on that, and that's where we've been ever since.
Tennessee Industrial Printing is West Tennessee's commercial printer. They have built their reputation on delivering on time, on budget, and on target. Tennessee Industrial Printing delivers on complex printing projects, mailing projects, and fulfillment services. With a fleet of presses, they have positioned themselves to handle small and large volume jobs. I've been able to work with tips with many of my clients' projects, and they have delivered every time. Wayne and his team have continuously invested to ensure that they are an efficient and effective option for commercial printing. Start your next project at tipsprints.com. You started as a family business.
Yep.
How did you, because it seems like you're still friends with your sister.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you make a family business work? And then how did you because you're not a family business anymore, really. I mean, it's just you now, right? So what's that transition like?
Yeah, so I went 23 years as a sole proprietor, off and on, partners in and out. My dad was never really a partner. Mm-hmm. My sister and I we had different entities. They all had Tencom, as the main name. But actually, and sole proprietorship's the easiest form of business. But if you have partners and things, it's different. But anyway, but more recently, my wife has been helping me with this business from the very beginning. And she never wanted to be an owner of the business. We're married, and so it's all hers anyway. But I was needing to make a change, either form an LLC or a corporation for some liability reasons with cybersecurity. And then anyway, we made the decision. She's actually now we're 50-50 partners in the corporation now. So it's still family, but it's kind of ebbed and flowed with the different structures.
Members of the family it's been part of.
So, yeah.
You've continued to have success with Tencom. And then fast forward a few years, you went and visited your first co-working space.
Yeah, I actually went to it was a creativity conference in Nashville, and this guy that put the conference on was also looking at developing a co-working space. And so he put it out there. He was looking for founding members that would help him with a little bit of seed funding for this venture. And basically, it was just you pay for a couple of years membership or whatever, and you would be a founding member. And it helped him get a little money started. But that was known as the Skillery. And yeah, I love the concept. And I actually had a staff member that still works with me that has moved around in different places, and this seemed like the perfect thing. You know, like he was in Nashville. This would be a great place for him to work, and so that finally opened, and it became our Nashville office. As a matter of fact, if you Google Tencom Nashville, it's still the pin still dropped on that building. But anyway, yeah. So that was my first experience with a true co-working space.
But you took to it.
Yeah, I loved it, and I thought, man, why can't this work in West Tennessee? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so funny thing, I thought, well, maybe not Dyersburg, but maybe Jackson. So I started looking around in Jackson at buildings, and thankfully, because I was just trying to solve a problem, I wasn't doing this for money, because I could do the math on it. Co-working spaces don't make money.
Yeah. But you had that problem before. You'd run into that problem when you were trying to start Tencom.
Yeah. So the whole concept of co-working struck with me because, like I said, when I first started, I had to sign all these contracts. Well, then in the years after that experience, I ran into so many different people that were trying to start out and were having that same problem, because Dyersburg does not have executive office space, mm-hmm. small offices for startups, where most cities have the executive suites. The precursor to co-working spaces. Mm-hmm. And so we actually started incubating different friends and people that were trying to start business. We just let them use an office, use a desk in our space, and just kind of just saw the benefit that was to people. It wasn't really for the money, just trying to help people get off the ground. So, I guess I was at the beginning stages of trying to help people in startup beyond the core offerings of my business.
Yeah.
So.
And someone did open one in Jackson, which is actually where we met.
Yes.
At the Co in Jackson. But you wanted to push that further and open one here.
Yeah, I thought, luckily I found out pretty quick in my search over there that there was a group of people that had the same idea, that were actually looking to open a co-working space. And they didn't know it, but we looked at the same building like a couple of days apart. And I literally, when I found out, I was like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. I
don't have to do it. I'm going to be a member if it ever gets off the ground. And so I was at a conference, and Ben Ferguson was speaking at the conference, and he was the founder, one of the founders of the Co, and he invited everyone at this conference to come over. I was sold on that concept. So I became a member of the Co in Jackson.
Yeah. Who pushed you to open one here?
Nobody. Yeah. When I say nobody, it was if you've ever watched Shark Tank and Kevin O'Leary, he tells bad investments. He'll tell them to take it out behind the barn, cut it up, burn it, bury it, shoot it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the response I got. They didn't understand the concept, and most people don't understand the concept of kind of public benefit companies. I'm just wanting to do this for the public. No, there has to be a profit motive to it. No, I have a business that I earn money with, and so nobody was into the idea as far as bankers or kind of mentors and people like that. So
someone you went to try to get started pushed you to do it.
Yeah. So the chamber president, who I've always thought of as a mentor, definitely a mentor of mine, his name was Alan Hester. He's passed away now. But I was really, because I just knew this is a nonprofit sort of no money sort of thing. So it's something that I thought the chamber should do it. Mm-hmm. And I said, Alan, I'll help with it. I'll do all the work, but we need to do this. The chamber, maybe do it at the chamber. There's a lot of space out there. And then, he finally was just like, hey, no, you need to do this. And he'd call me Donaldson. Donaldson, you need to do this. And so I'll help. And he's like, I'll help you however I can. And so, but he got sick around that time, and but he was a big inspiration for me to kind of push forward with the concept.
Yeah. Your sister thinks it fits you well. I have a clip about that as well.
Okay.
I think something that he really flourishes at is the economic development. He saw other small business owners trying to succeed and navigate not just how to build a business, but how to open one, how to start one. So he really did things you didn't see a lot of other businesses doing, and he stepped outside and started getting into the nonprofit side of things to help other entrepreneurs just starting out. And before I knew it, he bought these 2 old buildings in Dyer County. I was like, what did you do? This is horrible. These buildings are going to take so much work. He got grants. He put his own money in loan. He did everything. And the mill workspace is just amazing.
So we kind of talked about nobody was really excited about helping you get this started. Right. So how did you get it started?
Well, I just started looking around at buildings for a year or so, prior to when we actually finally bought a building. And I looked at so many different buildings, and, I think what got me is I actually found a building out, not downtown. I believe it was someone I knew from TVA, and I can't even remember how I met her or whatever, but she said, hey, she already knew about the concept because TVA had supported these spaces in other cities around the valley. And she said, you shouldn't be looking out on the bypass or whatever. You need to go downtown, and from an economic development point of view, because it's going to tick several boxes. And I said, well, I love downtown. My first office was downtown. I said, I can't find anything. She said, well, you need to refocus your efforts to downtown. And so I started looking at buildings downtown. There's nothing for sale. And then our longtime Main Street director, Steve Guttery, told me about these buildings that weren't for sale, but he knew the family and they were thinking about selling. And so when I came and looked at the buildings with the folks that owned it, there was just 2 old junk stores, and where we're sitting, there was not a square foot of space where you could touch the ground. Everything was just full from floor to ceiling, multiple drop ceilings. It was just totally covered up full of junk. And so, I saw that, and it was just, they're terrible. They didn't look good on the front. I mean, there's just no architectural features on the front. But I was standing out on the side, and I looked down this 100-foot wall, and it was straight as an arrow, no cracks, no nothing. And I thought, man, I think this is a good building. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be a big square box, but and so I talked to the people that were selling it, and I kind of reverse engineered the pricing, what I thought it was going to cost to do all this work. And we came up with the price that we agreed on, and they decided to, without them, we wouldn't be here because it wasn't for sale. Mm-hmm. They caught the vision and wanted to see these buildings used, for a good purpose. Their family had owned them since they were built. Mm-hmm. I think their grandfather built it was Mr. Fisher. He actually was one of the owners of the hardware store, I think. But so again, they didn't have to sell it. They bought the vision, and then we started the project. So we bought the buildings and then started.
ATA is a leading advisory and tax accounting firm. From tax planning and client accounting services to advisory and assurance, ATA has got you covered. With locations in Jackson, Dyersburg, Union City, Milan, Paris, Memphis, and Henderson, and more outside of West Tennessee, they have an expert nearby to support you. As ATA says, let's amplify your business together. Contact them today at ata.net. Direct Shred is a family-owned and operated commercial and residential shredding company based in Jackson, but serving all of West Tennessee and Memphis. If you need secure, certified, document, or hard drive destruction, contact Direct Shred today at directshred.com.
Special thanks to our season sponsor, Tennessee Industrial Printing.
So what year did the mill open?
We actually opened the mill itself in 2018. We bought the buildings in 2016, but
Took
we
2
opened
years to
here
get
in
open.
2018 on
Yeah.
this side.
What have you had any big challenges with the mill since it opened?
Yeah, from the beginning, there was a real passion for, I said there wasn't much excitement, so this was all speculative. I just felt like that people were I really felt like there's so many people moving out of these small towns and going to places like Nashville. And I thought, man, if we can have a Nashville feel, then people might not want to leave. So I wanted to provide a space for work and for networking events and things like that to give them a little bit of that Nashville type culture. And so, from the beginning, we had a real strong response. We had lots of people using the space. We had just tons of interest. I think the first year I counted 1,800 people through the building, for events and different things. And just a really good response. We started a quarterly networking group. We called it Gen 731 in partnership with the chamber. And things were just going real well. And, because we were solving multiple problems. So we provided a kind of unconventional networking space. It was a partnership with the chamber, but it wasn't the same as a chamber event because you didn't have to be a chamber member. So people I didn't even know how to describe it. It was like, it was just the people that were passionate about seeing something cool happen in this area. So we'd have events and it'd be doctors down to students. So I could never describe what this networking group was. It's not young, it's not professionals, Anyway, so that went on for a couple of years. We were solving the problem of low internet speeds, no place to work. Most people didn't have home offices. We were solving that problem when I first started out because you didn't have to sign any contracts. You just needed a laptop. And if you didn't have a laptop, we could probably find you a computer. So basically, we solved all the major challenges to starting a small business with this one space. And then COVID hit. And then, COVID hit and nobody wanted to be around anybody. By that time, we were starting to get fiber out in the rural areas. And so more and more people were getting higher speed internet. And everybody that used this space was figuring out how to make a nest, a little home office at their home. They didn't think they could before, but they all figured it out. And so the need for a co-working space became less and less. And so at the same time, my business was blowing up because the same reason. Everyone's working from home, and so all of our clients needed laptops, VPNs set up, all this stuff. And so this just went kind of dormant for about a year. And so, yeah, that was the big challenge that we went through.
So has that come back, or what are you doing now to continue to make the mill relevant?
Yeah, so we have done events and things since. We didn't bring back that quarterly networking group. We've definitely still been available for co-working memberships, but we don't really push it. We don't advertise it a lot, but we still have several members that use it. But what happened also because of COVID, we had a lot of small business owners that needed off-site meeting space. Either they didn't have a conference room or they just got tired of getting interrupted in their conference room. And so now we actually have more members who are small business owners that come here for off-site leadership meetups with their team. And so this was before we became a nonprofit, so and that was, for a couple of years. And even today, that's what the majority of our members use the space for.
That's really neat. And then you've got some accelerator programs and classes and stuff.
Yeah. So, my passion all along was to try to help small business people. But when you're running a company and you have no funding to do that, I would just do it sporadically, if somebody needed help. And I kind of got this reputation where people would just refer people to me. Hey, they'd be stuck in trying to start a business, and they'd say, you ought to go talk to Chris down at Tencom. And so I was having office hours with people for years to talk about nothing to do with my business. I would just mainly what I would do is share how I messed up and how they could learn from it. They'd tell me this, I'd say, nah, I can tell you about partnerships. I can tell you about this, and just tried to help people in that way. But then everything changed when a couple of years ago, Launch Tennessee, the state entrepreneur network, those folks came along and said, hey, look, we're interested in opening an entrepreneur center in the 9 counties of Northwest Tennessee. And we know about your space. We know about what you've been doing up there. Would you apply for this grant and become our 8th entrepreneur center? And with that is all the programming. So now I'm able to devote more time to this nonprofit. I actually have 2 staff members, in the region. And so we offer, like we offer one-on-one counseling, workshops, multi-week cohorts for groups of people going through the same startup journey. And so that's been the big shift, and that's our focus and where we are now. We still have the space, it's still available, but our focus is all 9 counties now, not just this building. So we work with a lot of chambers, and we just go wherever the people are. So, we're doing workshops in other counties now. So that's been the big difference.
Okay. I want to do a little bit of a lightning round here.
Okay.
So maybe we'll have Eric put in some thunder and lightning effects or something. All right. What are 3 business books you would recommend to people, and why?
Well, there's a couple that jump out at me straight away. And actually, there's 2 authors, 3 books. They're both local, fairly local. So have you heard of Todd Hopkins, founder of Office Pride Janitorial Services?
I've heard of Office Pride. I don't know Todd.
Okay, so Todd Hopkins is a Crockett County native.
Okay.
I met him at a business conference, after he had built this big company, the nationwide janitorial services company. So they contract with, companies to do janitorial services. And so he was speaking at this conference, but come to find out he's from Crockett County. And so he was speaking. It was kind of an inspirational speaker, motivational speaker for business. But while I was there, he had talked about one of his books. Well, I told him how interested I was in that. And anyway, I guess he got my address or whatever, but he mailed me this book, and it was, I think it was his Why Not to Say the B Word, or something to that effect. It's like, don't say the B word. So it's kind of a catchy title, but what the whole premise of it is, stop saying you're busy every time somebody says, so you've been busy? How busy? You must be busy. And because he was basically saying that you're busy is kind of a sympathy seeking mechanism. Mm-hmm. It's a psychological thing, but when I still do it to this day, but you're just busy as a small business owner, and you really need to communicate to people how busy you are if they're waiting on you for something. Well, I've just been super busy. And his whole idea in that book was just replace it with the word productive for 30 days and do it as a team in your company and hold each other accountable. So basically set up a swear jar, and every time you say busy, the other person's supposed to say productive.
Yeah.
And you're supposed to put $1 in the jar or whatever. And so, and the guys still do it because I still say busy all the time. But what it does is it takes you from this negative kind of sympathy, feeling sorry for yourself thing, I'm busy, to, you busy today? No, I've been really productive. So you turn it into this very positive because you have been productive. Most people are focused on all that they have in front of them and don't appreciate the 20 things they got done today.
Yeah.
Because a busy person gets more done than a non-busy person.
Or the blessing of being able to be busy.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
So that was one. And then he wrote this other book. It's fictional, but so what he found, it's called The Janitor. And both of these are real small books. And,
Okay.
I'm busy all the time, and so I have to read short books. But it's called The Janitor. And the reason he wrote that is he just found in his business that he kept hiring all these retired folks to be janitors that had way overqualified to be janitors. But they had retired and they just wanted something to do, and they had all this wisdom and so much that they could give back. And I don't want to say it was wasted on being a janitor, but they just had so much, and people you overlook the janitor. You go in a building and you just somebody over there sweeping, and you don't think anything about that person's life, or you just think that's all they can do is janitor. Well, I'd worked in a cabinet shop, and in cabinet shops you have people that are called floor sweeps. So you're creating so much dust and everything. You need somebody sweeping the floors all the time. And that's usually just an entry level, it's not a lot of skill in it. But I worked with a guy who was a retired, and he's probably only 40. He was a retired Air Force captain, refueling tanker captain, like pilot. Okay. So the ones that refueled the jets.
That's a scary thing.
But he was just as happy as he could be. But you just look at him, you think this guy's just sweeping the floors, but he is more qualified than any of us. This is a high stress, amazing job that he had, but it's just so stressful that he just retired and moved to the Keys and lived on a boat and just wanted to sweep floors. He got a pension and didn't care. So Todd wrote that book about this fictional tale about this, and you can relate to this young CEO with a family who was working too much, who was running his marriage into the ground because he was just working all the time. I can relate to that part. And he kept working late at night, and he just kept bumping into the janitor. And they found out this guy, he would just be dropping these nuggets of wisdom on him. So the book's kind of built around these 6 principles of how you can have a better life. And it's this janitor that instilled all this into this young CEO and turned his life around.
Okay.
So
those are
Todd
good
Hopkins.
Yeah, Todd Hopkins.
Yeah. And the other one, I'm sure you know this one, Mary Hill Brown, that has the Conflict Managed podcast.
Okay.
She's out of Martin.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
So she wrote a book. She's written a bunch of books, but she wrote a book called How to Be Unprofessional.
Yep. I've read that one, and I think we did a review for our other podcast.
I was thinking that you might have had experience with that. So what was so cool about that is because if she had just written a book and said how to be professional, it would just be in the trash can.
Mm-hmm.
So she wrote this short book about how to be unprofessional. On every page, I think it's the left page, is all the ways to be unprofessional. Mm-hmm. And I think even her subtitle was Tips to Ensure Failure.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought it was so cool. It tells you all the ways to be unprofessional. And then on the other page, of course, is the counterpoint, how to be professional.
Yeah, the framing it that way makes it very interesting.
Yeah, it makes you want to read it.
Yeah.
And so it was a quick read, too. And so I think I read it in just half a day or something.
Yeah, it's a good one. All right. When are you having the most fun in business?
I tell you, during the day, we as a company, and so the mill and Tencom, we all eat lunch together. Mm-hmm. And the Tencom anyway is can be real stressful. Mm. And so when we get to lunch, we just have a good time. We laugh about stuff that's happened during the day, laughed about stuff we've done the night before. It's just we have a good time. So we're always cracking up at lunchtime. But so that's fun. That's the fun part. But I get the most joy out of literally talking with clients. I just love finding problems and trying to help solve them. And when you can help somebody solve a problem for themselves by just giving advice, I get joy out of that. Fun and joy, kind of similar. But
if you had to start over again tomorrow in business, would you do this again?
It's a stressful job. It can take a toll. I think I won't know how much stress that I've really been under until I retire or maybe just go on to meet my maker. But I think if I could snap my fingers and I didn't change anything else, like I didn't change my family, my wife, my kids, architecture and real estate development, that's definitely my passion. I think I would have, if I could just snap my fingers, I would be doing that. But if I'm just dreaming anyway, keep my life the way it is, but just have that job.
Yeah, you would have missed the Sara Lee phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then what's the best advice you've ever got?
Gosh, that's a tough one. Man, I think I tell people this too. It's just don't believe the hype and don't believe the people trying to rain on your parade too. You got to just take it all in, hear what people have to say, but at the end of the day, you just got to filter it all and make your own decisions, listen to your gut, pray about it, but don't believe the hype.
Don't get too high, don't get too low.
Right.
Just keep going. All right, so looking forward, looking to the future, where's Tencom headed?
Well, we've grown into, I say nationwide. The way these companies work is at least for us, it's all word of mouth. And so you just have this really weird path of clients. You find this client over here, and then they refer you to this client. So we work all over the country. I think we just have a lot of room to grow. I mean, there's tremendous growth that we can have. We're constantly continuing to grow just through word of mouth. So I think, I've got an 8-year-old son, 18-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old son. And so I've got at least 10 years left in me. And who knows, and maybe the guys that work with me will take Tencom to the next level and I can retire one day.
Well, thinking about that, what do you hope your legacy is going to be here? In general.
I don't know. I don't know if anybody's really paying attention, but if there were to be a legacy to leave, it'd just be that I helped people. I just, service is our number one value. And I just, I didn't have a calling to be a preacher or anything like that, but I just believe that everybody has some calling or purpose, and ours is just to serve people in whatever way that they need it, whether it's technology, whether it's helping people start a business. But I think, if people said, well, he was just a guy that helped people, that'd be good enough for me.
Chris, thank you for your time, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to 40 by 45, the West Tennessee Business Podcast. This series is produced by Adelsberger Marketing, directed, recorded, and edited by Eric Archer, branding by Katie Howerton, motion graphics by Ricky Santos, and it is produced and hosted by me, Kevin Adelsberger. If you are interested in creating a podcast for your business, connect with us at adelsbergermarketing.com. Subscribe to 40 by 45 on your favorite podcast platform for future episodes, and thank you again for listening.